everybody. It is an absolutely beautiful day here where I am. I pray that it is beautiful wherever you are. Thank you for checking out the Gadget Inspector channel. I appreciate you. Well, there are about 1 million DJI Spark videos out on YouTube. Gotta be at least 1 million. But I recently picked up a DJI Spark for a really great price. So consider this video 1,000,001. Now, speaking of which, here in the summer of 2018, there have been a lot of really great drones released. Now, that's great for those of us that love this hobby for 2 reasons. Number 1, we get some really new innovative products. But number 2, for the bargain shoppers like me, it's a great opportunity to grab up some really great drones after they've had a significant price drop. So I picked up the DJI Spark for $379, the Fly More combo. It is a refurbished unit, but if you've seen my DJI Phantom 4 video, it's also a refurb that I bought, you'll see that these things are immaculate and a great option for those of you trying to save a few dollars. So stay tuned for more DJI Spark videos, Gadget Inspector style. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some Polar Pro filters for the DJI Spark. Now, this is the standard filter pack. It's a 3-pack. It comes with a fixed polarizer, and it comes with 2 ND filters, an ND8 and an ND16. In a few moments, we're going to be testing these out. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to test out the difference between shooting in auto and using the filters. Now, for those of you not familiar with ND filters or neutral density filters or polarizer filters, watch this brief overview and then we're going to get into the testing.
The primary purpose of an ND filter is to reduce shutter speeds. This results in more natural looking movement of objects in motion. You may have heard the term motion blur. A fast shutter speed freezes things in motion, but that's not how the human eye sees motion. There's a certain amount of blur that occurs when things move. ND filters block some of the light entering the camera lens, which allows for a lower or slower shutter speed, meaning the shutter remains open longer. Neutral density essentially means that the filter will not change the color or contrast of the light entering the lens. It's neutral. Polarized filters are not neutral because they actually do change the color and contrast of light. We'll discuss polarized filters in a little bit. Imagine a fan or a bird or maybe a car or a boat. A fast shutter speed will not result in natural looking movement. For example, if you have a fast shutter speed, the individual blades of a fan will appear static. But to your eye, there's always going to be some blur. Natural motion blur gives you more cinematic footage. So when using ND filters, that's what you're after. The rule of thumb in photography to achieve the most natural motion blur is to set your shutter speed at double the frame rate you're filming at. So if you're shooting video at 30 frames per second, you want the shutter speed at 1/60th of a second. Now, there is a way to manually calculate which ND filter to use in order to reduce shutter speed enough to get the ideal exposure. But Polar Pro has an app that makes this super simple. You just enter the frame rate you're shooting at and the current shutter speed without the use of a filter, and the app will tell you which filter to use. In this case, you can see it's suggesting the ND16 filter. Now, polarized filters are going to reduce glare and sun flares. They're great for filming bodies of water, structures with windows, or anything that reflects bright sunlight. They also increase color saturation and contrast. The filter that comes with the 3-pack we're testing in this video has a fixed polarization, but most of them are adjustable. Okay, let's go ahead and test these things out now.
Takeoff. The home point has been updated. Please check it on the map.
Well, all right. We're establishing our baseline here starting in auto mode without use of a filter. This will give us the shutter speed needed to achieve an even exposure. Now let me say right up front that this test is not being done in a laboratory, so there might be slight variations in light due to changes in cloud cover, sun position, etc. But I flew the same exact flight path using each filter back to back, so conditions were essentially the same for each flight. I went up to about 20 feet, then out about 100 feet, straight ahead over this small tree, and then over the water. The sun is to the right. Now, as you turn towards and away from the sun, your exposure value will change. In auto mode, it will automatically adjust the shutter speed to keep the exposure at 0 or even. When in manual mode, it will remain at the shutter speed you set, and as lighting conditions change, your exposure value will change. Again, for this test, we're following the same flight path without any changes in direction. So as you can see here in auto mode, without a filter, the shutter speed is 1/2000th of a second. Next, we're flying the same path in manual mode, and you can see here that I've manually set the shutter speed at 1/2000th of a second for even exposure. So that's our baseline. So I took that information over to the Polar Pro app, and as you can see, it recommended an ND32 filter in order to achieve a 1/60th shutter speed. The standard pack only comes with an 8 and a 16, so the best we can do is the ND16. But we're taking a look at all three filters in this video. Okay, we're checking out the fixed polarized filter first, and you can see that it actually reduces some of the light entering the lens. Not to the degree that the ND filters do, but it definitely blocks some light. So instead of a shutter speed of 2000, I was able to dial it down to 640 for even exposure. Now, when I watched the footage later on, I couldn't really tell whether the colors were more deeply saturated or more contrasted. But check out this side-by-side comparison. The footage with the polarized filter is on the left, and the footage without the filter is on the right. The image on the right looks good, and the sky actually seems to have a deeper blue color. But notice that the entire image has a blue tint to it. There's more of a reflection coming off of the water, and you don't have very much detail at all. Now look at the polarized image. Look out at the tree line. There's a lot more detail in the trees, and the color is richer. Also notice the ground beneath the trees. It has a natural yellowish brown color, but it's flat and washed out in the image without a filter on the right. Notice the difference in the little tree in the foreground. You're getting much more detail and saturation with the image on the left. I think so, at least. And the difference in how the water looks should be the most obvious. You can actually make out the vegetation floating on the water, and the actual contrast in color is more natural and richer. The polarized image is closer to what I would get to after making corrections in Lightroom or Photoshop. So this reduces a step or two in my workflow. Next, we have the ND8 mounted. Now, you're likely not going to notice as much of a difference as with a polarized filter, but you can see that we're able to get the shutter speed down to 1/200th of a second. And I was surprised to see that the image has much more of a warm look versus the coolness of the image without the filter. And there's more detail here as well. Lastly, we have the ND16, and it gets the shutter speed down to 1/100th of a second. So in order to get down to that ideal shutter speed of 1/60th on a bright sunny day like this, looks like an ND32 filter would be the one to use. But getting within 2 or 3 stops of 1/60th still garners a better image than without a filter. Okay, here's all 4 images together, so you can have a look and see what you think. They all look really good to me. The camera on the Spark is a lot better than I expected it to be. But I still prefer the second image with the polarized filter. Well, after testing out the filters, I have to say that they do make a difference. I actually prefer the polarizer more than the ND filters, mainly because of how it improves the images. I also like that it's fixed, so I don't have to worry about adjusting it. So are the filters worth it? I say yes. Polar Pro filters are a bit expensive, which is why I went with this pack, which is $49.99 versus $100 to $150 for some of the other packs they sell. Now, you don't necessarily need filters to get good footage from the Spark, but now that I've used them for a while, I just prefer the way the footage looks. The one thing I have had a problem with is when tilting the camera all the way down. It tends to get some resistance from the way the filter is mounted, so this causes problems when trying to do a panorama, for instance. So I just remove the filter when doing the panos. Well, that's it, y'all. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'll have a lot more Spark videos on the way. God bless y'all, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.